The year is the 1800s. Most authors followed the traditional writing styles of the time, which included telling spooky stories that were based on situational fear. A new author began writing that brought terror to a new level. Edgar Allan Poe is an impactful poet because of his creation of the short story, creation of horror genre, and his international influence. Edgar Allan Poe was born in 1809 to actor parents who passed away only a few years later. After his parents' deaths, the Allan family took him into their home. He attended some of the finest universities at the time, such as University of Virginia at Charlottesville in 1825. 2 years later, he enlisted in the Army and was later discharged in 1829. However, enlisting in the military was not the most notable thing he did in 1827. That year, Poe also published his first poetry collection, Tamerlane and Other Poems. Poe also published his second literature collection, Al-Araf, Tamerlane, and Minor Poems. In 1831, Poe went to New York and published his third literature collection, Poems. His stories were published in the Saturday Courier, but went unnoticed until his death in 1849. Poe also married his 12-year-old cousin in 1826. She died in 1847. Poe also edited magazines to support himself, such as Burton's Gentleman magazine and Graham's magazine. Edgar Allan Poe died on October 7, 1849, under mysterious circumstances.
Edgar Allan Poe was a master of the macabre. He wrote horror, he wrote poetry, criticism, fiction, mystery. He was a master of suspense.
Edgar Allan Poe, called by many the father of the detective story, was born on January 19, 1809, in Boston, Massachusetts.
When Poe was 2 years old, his mother passed away, and his father had already abandoned the family. He was taken in as a foster child by the Allan family.
Edgar Allan Poe was the creator and architect of the modern short story and the new genre of poetry. Before him, stories were much longer in length. They tended to be novels that were hundreds of pages long in length and took days to read. An example of one of these novels would be Charles Dickens and his novel A Christmas Carol. Edgar Allan Poe was able to tell a story in a short amount of time due to his use of intricate detail. Poe also wrote an essay called Philosophy of Composition. This essay details how he created his poems and is still used today by poets around the world. Edgar Allan Poe is considered to be the father of modern horror and detective stories. Poe started the horror movement through his creation of The Raven and The House of Usher. He was one of the first noted authors to use a psychological approach to terror. Previous to this, authors used spooky occurrences to scare the reader, whereas Poe delved into the reader's mind. Many famous authors now use this today, including famous horror novel writer Stephen King. Poe also created the first mystery novel, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. He was the first to use the concept of deductive reasoning, also called ratiocination. Writers such as Agatha Christie, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and other great mystery writers have also been influenced by this.
Poe invented detective fiction when he wrote The Murders in the Rue Morgue in 1841.
Murders in the Rue Morgue really deserves to be called the first detective story. It started the whole tradition of detective fiction.
The Raven, which was published in 1845, was his huge breakthrough. It became a big bestseller.
Poe's career very much went up and down until he really hit The Raven. And that poem was known by, it seems everyone in the world. It had an enormous press.
Edgar Allan Poe also had major international influence. Unbelievably, Edgar Allan Poe was more famous in France than in the United States. The French were the first to appreciate his writings, which then spread throughout Europe. It spread to places such as Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Russia. Dostoevsky wrote Crime and Punishment, which was inspired by Poe. People like Charles Baudelaire would translate Poe's works so others could read them. Poe was also fascinated in science and often used scientific references in his works. Edgar Allan Poe showed others how to make a living off writing and also generalized scientific references in literature.
Edgar Allan Poe's legacy in American literature is very detectable in all of the mystery dramas and stories we have, and all the kind of horror and vampire work that we see, that there is that trace of the sort of horror and mystery that Poe really was able to harness in his writing.
Poe is an American icon. I think he's more than a writer.
Even today, more than 150 years after he died, everybody loves Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe still influences literature and film today. Movies like It, created by Stephen King, and television shows such as American Horror Story are examples. He created the horror and mystery genre which famous authors after him still use today. Examples of these would be Sherlock Holmes and Stephen King. He created the short story which is used as a unit in most high school and college English classes. Poe's essay, Philosophy of Composition, is still used by poets today to create their poem. With the help of translators, his works are now readily available online throughout the world. Without Edgar Allan Poe, literature would not have advanced as much as it has today.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember